Hey guys, Script here with another video, and a lot to unpack here today. They're sort of pumping the news and talking about the Acolyte all the time. So there's some things to cover. This video I'm going to focus mostly on Leslie Headland. Obviously there's been some Kathleen Kennedy quotes, but let's just start with this, and there's a lot to unpack here. And I'm not going to sit here and just go after Leslie Headland, honestly. And if you watch my last video, I honestly think, these directors and stuff, they're just being used by the studios, and they got 15 producers for every show so they can be watched over and be hovered over, and that's why you see them going through so many directors and writers and stuff, because people quit because they just can't take it anymore, because the executives and Lucasfilm and Kathleen Kennedy completely make all the decisions. So that is, as if you're a James Mangold and you want to be, used, then you continue. You do Indy 5, you do what you're told, it's a flop. You're going to do the Jedi Prime movie, you do what you're told, it's going to flop. So some people don't care, some people do. And the actors and actresses now just come back for the money. They don't come back because they love it anymore, unfortunately. And if you want to know if that's true, just, I have many examples and many videos of that. So first of all, let's just listen to this, because this is hilarious right off the bat.
Two directors talk about Star Wars.
That sounds good.
That does sound good.
That actually
Let's
sounds
do it.
really good.
Tell me about the Acolyte.
I'm sorry, just you asking me that question is making me cry.
Is it? That's all right.
Yeah.
It is a big deal to a lot of people. It affects people in different ways.
Okay, so I genuinely think Leslie Headland does care. I think she's she's out of her element, and I think it's gonna be bad, but I don't think she doesn't care. I just don't think she understands what she got herself into totally, and I don't think she has any business doing Star Wars. I've said from the very beginning that her background in the stuff that she's produced is just not even remotely connected to Star Wars any more than Obaid Chinoy's, right? So, not the right candidate. I think she was hired because, again, it's all nepotism with these people. It's not about your ability or your skill or your background or anything like that. It's just, are you friends with me? And I think she's just friends with these people, and so she gets a show.
This is your story, so.
What I was interested in examining were the Sith.
Uh-oh! SpaghettiOs! There you go. And guys, it's so funny to me, because I have these debates on Twitter, and people go after me, because I'll make predictions. For example, I predicted way before the Ahsoka show came out that Anakin was going to be in it. And I linked a trailer from just one of these sites that just makes fake trailers, fan trailers. My point wasn't to say the trailer was real. My point was to say Anakin was going to be in the show. This was just an example in this trailer that some guy made. Boy, did people ever go out, you don't know anything. Who do you think you are? And again, I don't have really sources, kind of, but not really. I just know how these people think. So when the Acolyte came out, or was announced, I was like, the first thing I tweeted was, they are going to have Sith in this and wreck the 1,000 years of the Sith not revealing themselves to the Jedi, which is in The Phantom Menace. Not only does Ki-Adi-Mundi say it, Darth Maul also says it, at last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. George Lucas has said it in interviews over the years that that's the case. There was no contact. So unless this Sith kills every Jedi, like we see in the trailer, the Sith, and there's a whole bunch of Jedi and they're confronting him, unless he kills them all before they're able to go and tell Yoda or go and tell somebody, they've wrecked the lore again. And I said in another video, they said Kylo Ren and Snoke aren't Sith, because they're trying to make you think that they're creative and they're coming up with characters that aren't Sith. Balin and Shin and all this stuff. Even though everything they do is Sith-like, they carry lightsabers, they think like Sith, they behave like Sith, but they're not Sith because we just said they're not. To make you think they're doing something different when they're not. They don't have the gall to write a villain that's not Sith-like or a Sith or carries a lightsaber. They're too scared, or they don't know how. They could have written this show with another enemy. It would have been perfectly fine, but they had to make it now. She didn't even say it's a non-Sith, like they made Kylo and Snoke, even though Snoke was trained by Palpatine and Kylo was trained by Snoke, and he uses Force lightning, and it's retarded. They're Sith. She's even saying they are Sith in this show. So what does that mean? that means this could be a very lore-destroying show, as I predicted when it was announced. This isn't hard to figure out. This doesn't take a genius. You just have to know how these people think. It's very simple stuff. So they're going to wreck the lore of the prequels. That's what's coming. And I predicted this a year ago.
These things that George understood about filmmaking, understood about iconography, are things that we still try to tap into.
It's the Western. It's the samurai film. It has to feel elevated, but it also has to feel like Star Wars. Basically, what George created, it's the North Star.
Okay, so, and in this interview, they pretend to care about what George made, right? Like, Dave and Leslie are sitting here talking about, oh, George this and George that, and honor George. Meanwhile, you're literally changing George's lore. Like, you're not honoring George at all. And Dave totally bastardized the Force. Finally, the mainstream media has now acknowledged the fact that George's balance was light dominance, was the light side, and that the dark side is a twisting and manipulation of the Force. Well, Dave made it this thing where it's like it's equal amounts, which essentially comes down to, you know, if there's a Sith, then there has to be a Jedi that comes, and if there's a Jedi, so the Star Wars never actually ends, because if the good guys win, well, then just some dark sider's going to come out because that's what the Force wants. So it's just like this never-ending nothingness. That's Dave. So, no, I'm not falling for this. They don't honor George at all. They're using George's name to prop themselves up and make themselves look good. And like Filoni said right off the bat, it's Leslie's story. It's not about the fans. It's not about telling a good story. It's about us, you know, being happy about what Leslie thinks. I don't care what Leslie thinks. I care about the lore. I care about it being done properly and honoring what came before it, not pooping on it, which this show looks like it's going to do. I hope I'm wrong. Maybe by some miracle, they'll explain the whole Sith being there and all that other stuff, and the Jedi seeing them and stuff, and it'll make sense, but the odds of that are very slim. Okay, then we get to this New York Times article. Leslie Headland hopes the Force is with the Acolyte. Her new Star Wars show dream come true, but she knows it carries enormous expectations. I'd be lying if I said I wasn't scared. Again, the course is laid out for these people. I don't know why they think it's so hard. I think they think it's hard because they're changing stuff. The course is laid out. It's not that complex. And again, you could have a show in this era very easily. Just write a different villain that's not a Sith. And if you do show Sith, they can't be revealing themselves to the Jedi. You could show them, you know, doing something else, but Leslie Headland has been telling Star Wars stories on screen since she was a teenager. Ostracized at school for being different, she retreated inward, making stop-motion films starring her action figures. Okay, I used to do that too. My brother did that. We actually did it in a media application course in high school as well. I'd like to see those. Very interesting. So when she found success as an adult in Hollywood, Headland helped create Russian Doll, blah, 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 we know. I essentially cold called Lucasfilm and, after a lot of conversations, found myself pitching a show, utterly elated, my ultimate career goal, the culmination of my fandom. Do you guys think it's possible that some of these people are exaggerating how much they liked Star Wars? Do you ever get that sense? I kind of do. I'm not saying she didn't. Let's see these stop motion things he made. Let's see them. I feel like they're all saying how big fans they are, but then they make stuff that sucks, or they make stuff that violates established lore, and it doesn't feel like they're fans when they do that. So, and again, this show might be just super awesome. It took 4 years to make this show. I don't know if that's a good sign. It attempts 2 feats at once, pleasing old school Star Wars fans who can seem unpleasable, while telling an entirely new story, one that requires no prior knowledge of Star Wars and that showcases women and people of color. That's what matters. As far as telling a new story that you don't need prior knowledge, that's a bonus. Initially, they were saying, oh, you gotta read the High Republic books, and then you'll get a better, you'll understand more. It's like, no, man, don't stop doing that. Stop making people read crap. Just, if you can't explain it on screen, then don't put it in. They've been doing that with everything. Things in the sequels, things in the shows. So this is actually nice to hear. You don't, as far as this whole, like, women and people of color crap, honestly, like, if you're a woman and watching this, or you're a person of color watching this, are you getting kind of tired of the pandering? Don't you just want to say, and people that are good actors? Like, do you want to be known as, I'm a person of color and an actor? Or do you just want to be an actor? Right? Like, isn't it getting a little stupid now? For the faithful, the Acolyte serves up scads of Jedi franchise fundamental that the other live-action Star Wars TV shows have depicted sparingly or not at all. The opening scene in the Acolyte takes place in an eatery. Crowded... Oh, so that's the opening scene when they fight. So they basically gave us the opening scene. When Carrie-Anne Moss's character's fighting whatever May or whatever her name is. Same time, the Acolyte embraces what some people call New Star Wars, an era defined by diversity and expansion beyond the Skywalker saga, which started... Again, I'm so sick of the word diversity. And diversity doesn't automatically mean good. Just because you throw in a bunch of different colored people doesn't make your writing good. Stop using the stupid diversity. Stenberg stars as a dreadlocked warrior who has a complicated relationship with Jedi Master, blah, blah, blah. Jodie Turner-Smith plays the lesbian leader of a regal coven of witches. Uh-oh. Why would her sexuality be a thing? Like, are they going to talk about it in the show? Like, are they going to have a love scene with her and one of her witch coven chicks? Like, Star Wars is not sexual. Yes, Han and Leia became a couple, but nobody worried about characters and their sexuality, right? like at no point. Like, some of us thought maybe 3PO was like a gay droid when we were kids, and nobody cared. But nobody came out and said, yes, C-3PO was gay. Like, it was just, you just left it. You didn't worry about it. It wasn't a thing. So unless there's an actual scene of her and another chick going at it, I don't see why they need to make a point that she's a lesbian. I just don't understand the point of doing that. And if they do have a scene of her in bed with another woman, that's not really a Star Wars thing to do because Star Wars doesn't have sex scenes. The closest thing we got was Andor getting out of bed. I think he was, with some prostitute or something, which again isn't Star Wars. There's things about Andor that are very not Star Wars. That's one of them. While the Filipino-Canadian actor Manny Jacinto appears as a shadowy traitor in one of her most action-oriented roles, The Matrix, Carrie-Anne Moss plays a steely Jedi named Master Indar. She plays Trinity. They're even marketing it like Trinity. The Acolyte also breaks new ground behind the camera while women have directed episodes, blah, 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 blah. Headland is the first woman to create a Star Wars series. I just don't care what your body parts are and where you're sticking them. Like, it's so boring. It's 20 years of this obsession. It was like working on a razor's edge, she said during a Zoom interview, pushing her oversized glasses higher on her nose. You're thinking this is what people want from Star Wars. This is what people don't want. It can mess with your head. No, just follow the lore. It's not that hard. It's because you guys keep changing things and talking about lesbians and bringing in and changing the Force and changing and adding Force healing when it shouldn't be there. And it's super easy. You guys just dick with it, and then you end up with problems and piss people off. Like, it's not that hard. During the creative process, I had to give myself the forgiveness as an artist to fall off the razor. As long as I got back up, that was my promise to myself. Okay, well, whoop-de-doo. See, it's all about you, Leslie. Don't say anything about the fans. It's all about you and how you're feeling and how you're dealing with what people want and don't want. And why don't you ask them? From the second that any new Star Wars project comes into public view, Disney announced the Acolyte in 2020. Fans claw for information and pick apart what they find. It's part of what makes Star Wars so powerful. People care, blah, blah, blah. Rumors can solidify into facts. Some Star Wars obsessives, for instance, have worried that Headland's show breaks canon or tinkers with already established... It does. It does. Unless all those Jedi die, it does. In fact, Headland chose to place the Acolyte at the very beginning of the Star Wars timeline, so canonical issues would be minimal. Yeah, and yet you still... and yet you still have the Sith revealing themselves to the Jedi! Like, it wasn't hard, just don't have the Sith reveal themselves to the Jedi. That you had one job, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't write a villain that wasn't a Sith. The show is a mystery thriller. Someone is killing Jedi. Pre-Phantom Menace era. Star Wars novels never on screen. The only character in the Acolyte that previously existed anywhere in the franchise is a Jedi Master from the novels named Vernestra Roa. Well, I think she's from... That's the lightsaber whip chick from High Republic. Isn't this the High Republic era? Like, Leslie wanted this show to be accessible. No homework needed before watching. She asked me what I knew about Star Wars, and my answer was Harrison Ford runs around space with a giant dog. We called laughing. Oh, is this the person that never watched Star Wars? Yeah, let's hire people that don't know what Star Wars is. That's fresh. I mean, in a way, I can kind of see that that's kind of fresh. But if she doesn't know anything about Star Wars, like, what's she gonna add? She wanted to potentially invite in new fans, people like me. You don't need to bring in a writer that doesn't know Star Wars to bring in new fans. Fans aren't gonna be like, well, I'm gonna watch this show because there's somebody else that doesn't know what Star Wars is that's writing it. So that makes me want to watch it. Like, no. Like, what? Who would ever... It's just... I don't understand. The first Acolyte trailer, blah, 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 blah. Fan sites instantly deem the fighting style force foo. It's just Matrix fighting in Star Wars. That's what it is. Has pushed back on in predictable fashion. Why are there so many women, girls? Wait. So they bring up, so this article brings up the force foo, which I push back on, right? It's obvious what it is. I'm not an idiot. It's never existed in Star Wars. Jedi didn't stand there and knife fight with people. They pulled out their lightsabers, they said, stop what you're doing, or bad things will happen to you, and if they didn't stop, then bad things happen to them. Kind of like the cops, right? If you're running around murdering somebody like this Acolyte chick is, and the cops find you, and they pull their guns, and they say, drop your weapon, because you've run around murdering people, and you don't, they shoot you. That's what the Jedi do. Look at all the Jedi times, anytime they're dealing with anybody. And all the way back to the first scene in Mos Eisley in the cantina, right? Buddy pulls a blaster on Luke, your hand gets chopped off. He warns them, leave him alone, doesn't, hand gets chopped off, or arm gets chopped off. Anyway, it's just Matrix, and that's why they brought in Carrie-Anne Moss. It's not hard to figure out what they're doing. Okay, so, talking about force food, yes, I push back on force food, but a loud, primordial part of the Star Wars fandom has pushed back in predictable fashion. About what? The force food? Why are there so many women, girls, and minority characters increasingly dominating the ranks of the Jedi? Reads a comment on the Acolyte trailer, with others expressing a similar worldview. And that's clearly in reference to the shots in the trailer of the kids training. And they're all girls. I think there was one guy. Right? So, again, is that diverse? If they show a scene and they show the Jedi Temple and they show the kids training and there's, say, 12 kids and one of them is a guy... How is that diverse? It's not. It's the opposite. And some people think that that's the issue here. Is they're saying, well, there's always been so many boys in Star Wars, so now we're going to flip the script and make it all about girls. Okay, you can do that. Or, here's a suggestion. Write something else. Instead of changing something into what you want it to be, or you think it should be, why don't you leave it alone, let them have that, and you write something else. But they can't do that, right? They're actually showing themselves. Like, if the idea is to just throw a whole bunch of women and stuff in there, they're literally exposing themselves as crappy writers because they have to take somebody else's thing and change it. Now, again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be bad. You know, like, a lot of us were really rooting for Rey, for example. I thought, hey, you know what? Yeah, like, let's have a female Jedi be the focus, because we have had a lot of guys. And I thought she had the right look and the accent and everything. She fit the characters, the role really, really well. Unfortunately, she was written into the ground. So it doesn't automatically mean this is bad, but I can see why somebody would make that comment. Like, it just feels like there's a ton of girls in this show, not a lot of guys. Having said that, there are guys. Like, the shots, like this one right here, of them when they're older, there's dudes. Like, it's not like there's no dudes. So, I'm not really worried about that. I'm just worried about the writing's gonna suck. It is a version of the same misogyny and racism that greeted Rey, the female Jedi who made her debut in The Force Awakens. Well, no, again, she was poorly written. And that drove Kelly Marie Tran off social media. Honestly, I do think there were some people that were a-holes, on Twitter and stuff like that. I get it. But in reality, it was a tiny, tiny, tiny minority of people that said, we don't like Kelly Marie Tran because she's Oriental, or we don't like Rey because she's a girl. Most of the criticism, 99% of it, was based on the characters and the roles they played in the films, not the fact that they were female or whatever race they were. And if you disagree with that, feel free to prove it. Show me. Show me the vast majority of tweets that are based on that, and I'll show you the absolute thousands upon thousands that were based on the actual characters themselves and what they did in the films. And the guys that made the films knew that, because after The Last Jedi and everyone said Kelly Marie Tran's character sucked, character sucked, not her. Character, she's actually a good actress, right? They took her out of The Rise of Skywalker. She had like one line. So it's not like they don't know. They know the reason. But the media and stuff tries to turn it into like something else. Like the 5 Nazis that commented out of the 50,000 comments. You know, they're going to focus on that. Kathleen Kennedy's experienced it with South Park harshly attacking her in an episode last year. Yeah, because it's lame, dude. It's just lame. If you put a girl in it like Rey and made it good, we would be like, sweet, but you make it lame. And so it sucks. Some trolls have nicknamed headline series the Acolyte. Well, you know what, though? You feed into that when your entire, like the whole marketing campaign from Star Wars Celebration 2023 to today has been, the first thing out of their mouths is diversity. That's the first thing you guys marketed it on. Is look at all the black people we have in the show. Look at all the women we have in the show. Look at all the gays and lesbians we have in the show. That was the first thing you went to. So of course people are going to make fun of that because you're not talking about the show. You're just talking about how great you are because you incorporated all these different diversity things. If you don't want people to focus on that, then don't focus on that. So they're talking out of both sides of their mouths. They're saying, no, you're a bigot because you're focusing on that, but all we talk about is that. Like, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you want people to focus on the show and how artsy you are and how great of a Star Wars show it is, then make that the focus. Don't make it, and you need to watch this because of how much diversity we put in it. Why don't you just let that be there, and if people want to acknowledge that when it comes out, fine. But no, you have to just constantly talk about it. So of course people are going to talk about it if that's all you're talking about. In a brief telephone interview, Kennedy's support for the Acolyte was steadfast. My belief is that storytelling does need to be representative of all people. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. That is absolute garbage. That's an easy decision for me. No, it doesn't, and it shouldn't be. Because you can't please everyone. You just can't. You cannot. If you do a movie about a kingdom in Africa, for example, it isn't going to represent me. You know, I might even still like it. I might not, right? I like good movies. But it's not going to be representative of me. I didn't feel represented in the Black Panther movie. Why does everybody have to be represented? It's a good movie. But I don't feel, quote, represented. It's so ridiculous. I didn't feel represented when I was a kid and I was watching The Cosby Show. I watched it because it was funny and it was a good show. Family Matters, whatever, name it. I watched all those shows. I didn't feel like I was represented. I didn't need to. I just liked it because it was funny. And yeah, I could relate to them. Yes, black families have the same issues as every other family, any other race of family. And the episodes talk about the kids and the issues in high school and bullying, and they talk about, marital issues. They go through the whole spectrum of stuff that families deal with. And guess what? All races of families deal with that stuff. But Kennedy thinks she's like changing the world. We're representing all people. It's so stupid. Operating within these giant franchises now with social media and the level of expectation, it's terrifying, Kennedy continued. Well, yeah, because you're doing a bad job, Kennedy. You're doing a bad job. I think Leslie has struggled a little bit with it. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle. You think the men don't struggle with this a bit more? You think the men don't struggle? Really? That's what you think? You think it's just a woman thing? And if the men aren't struggling, maybe Filoni doesn't struggle. Maybe that explains why he can just completely piss on the lore and not care. Because, yeah, I guess maybe he doesn't feel a struggle. He's that arrogant. If you're hiring men that are that arrogant that they don't feel like it's a struggle, at least a little bit, then maybe that's on you, Kathy. I think a lot of the women who step into Star Wars struggle with this a bit more because of the fan base being so male-dominated. They sometimes get attacked in ways that can be quite personal. And again, that's a small percentage of people that are commenting that way. And Kathy, you're admitting it's a male-dominated IP. Always has been. The first thing you do on day one is put on the Force's female t-shirt. So you're the one who took on this task of trying to turn a male-dominated brand into a female-dominated brand because you're that bloody arrogant that you think you're going to be able to do that and have it be successful and make girls care about it when most of them don't. Some do, but most just don't. It's a male-dominated brand, just like you just said. And you think you're Star Wars Jesus and you're going to convert all these women to loving Star Wars, and then you're getting mad because the men who watch it don't like what you're doing. Why did you take on this task? Why didn't you just make good Star Wars and not worry about it? So don't get mad when people don't like what you're doing, when you're changing something and you're openly changing something and thinking you're going to change it all into something it isn't. And then you think what? That the guys that always like Star Wars are just supposed to like bow down to you and tell you how great it is? If the stories suck? You can't just throw a woman in it and make the stories good. You have to write good stories. But that's what you thought you were going to do. You thought you were just going to throw a bunch of women in it, throw a bunch of diversity hires into it, and everyone's just going to love it. Headland has tried to limit her exposure to online conversation, both good and bad, instead relying on friends for weather reports. As a fan myself, I know how frustrating some Star Wars storytelling in the past has been. I would love to hear specifics on that. What past? Are you talking about the prequels that you're now changing lore on, or are you talking about Disney Star Wars? Headland said, declining to cite specific examples. Exactly. She's too scared to. So don't even say that then. She followed up with a text message, I stand by my empathy for Star Wars fans, but I want to be clear, anyone who engages in bigotry, racism, or hate speech, who is doing that? No one is doing that. Literally no one. It's like this tiny, I don't even think it's 1% of the responses to the trailer, for example, involve bigotry, racism, or hate speech. Or have you redefined that to like anything anybody says is automatic bigotry? Like, where is the line here that constitutes bigotry? Is it just saying, hey, I noticed there's a lot of women in this. Like, where are the boy Padawans in that scene? Oh! That's racism and bigotry. That's hate speech. You don't think there's enough boys. It's just because 9 out of 10 of them are girls. You're a bigot because you noticed that. How dare you notice that? Like, is that the line? Or is it like actual bigotry? Like, I hate women. These bees shouldn't be making this movie. F you, Leslie. Like, that's bigotry. Criticizing the fact that there's all girl Padawans is not bigotry. Like, by looking at that scene, looking at the characters and saying, hey, looks like there's only one guy. Why is that? That isn't bigotry. That's literally just making an observation. So, again, why do they do this before every show comes out? Like, they do this every time. It's not going to stop us. None of us are bigots. We're just going to criticize it. And if it sucks, it's going to get criticized. If you're making stupid writing decisions, it's going to get criticized. If you make costumes that look cheap and crappy, you're going to get criticized. Like, that's just what's going to happen. And no one's talking about bigotry, racism. No one. Like, all of the Star Wars channels on YouTube, the guys that, like, criticize the actual writing, none of us are talking about this stuff. And we're not going to not talk about it because you're going to claim that it's bigotry or racism to notice things in your show that are dumb. Star Wars projects aren't known for personal or idiosyncratic filmmaking. The production and marketing budgets are simply too high. The storytelling must appeal to the widest possible audience to make the numbers work. Well, they've done a good job of not doing that. Ruin Johnson, who directed The Last Jedi, said it would be bad news if you came into this saying, how do I make this mine? He didn't even try to put his own stamp on it. That contradicts other stuff that he said. That's a nonsense line. Kennedy, however, pushed Headland to do just that with The Acolyte. Oh, good. Oh, yeah. You've written a great Star Wars show, Kennedy told her in 2019 in response to her early scripts. Now go write a Leslie Headland show. And there it is, right? That's what they call respecting George Lucas and respecting the fans and respecting the lore. Go write a Leslie Headland show. So as I've said all along, Kathleen Kennedy's the head of the snake, guys. This is how she thinks. She thinks she's Star Wars Jesus and Leslie Headland is her Peter, and or Filoni's her Peter and Leslie Headland is her John, and they're gonna convert women into liking Star Wars, and then if the existing fan base doesn't like it, they're bigots. It's just... Oh, Kennedy had read one of the Headland's plays, Cult of Love, which explores a completely... All of Headland's stuff is like sex stuff. Relationship between siblings. It's about her personal experience. It was just so well done and incredibly emotional. Okay, maybe this one wasn't a sex thing. You guys let me know. Cult of Love sounds a little weird, though. But all her other shows, right? That's the emphasis. Not very Star Warsy. Explaining exactly how Headland took Kennedy's advice would spoil a major plot point in The Acolyte. Let's just say that Headland heightened a clash between characters. I have a very strained relationship with my youngest sister, and I feel like one of the reasons it is strained is that we both see each other as the bad guy. And if I was going to tell a story about bad guys, it seemed to me that the place to start should be a familial relationship where one person is adamantly convinced of her correctness and the other person is also adamantly convinced of her correctness. Okay, I think she's probably talking about the fact that Amanda Stenberg is playing two people, and one of them's a Sith Acolyte and one of them's a Jedi. But we don't speak. I think this will be a surprise to her. Why don't you speak, right? She wouldn't say anything more on the topic except to emphasize that she has a good relationship with her other sister who helped make a visual presentation that Headland used to pitch the Acolyte. Okay, so this is it's a very personal show for her, which again doesn't automatically mean it's going to be bad, but again, look at the focus, right? It's all about her. It's all about them. It's not about you as a fan. It's not about Star Wars continuing a great legacy. It's not about George Lucas. It's about her. It's about Kathleen Kennedy. It's about Dave Filoni. It's about them. Look what they did. Stenberg, the show's star, said Leslie really is driven by emotional and heart and relationships. So even though our show is within the Star Wars universe and set in outer space in a galaxy far, far away, it's really a family drama. Headland had directed indie films Bachelorette, Sleeping with Other People, and served as a showrunner for Russian Doll, the hit Netflix comedy about a New Yorker caught in a reincarnation loop, but she never managed a big budget production. So again, it's all relationship stuff. What she lacked in experience, she made up for with Star Wars geekdom. Headland became a Star Wars superfan as a teenager. It was an apocalyptic period of her life, or at least it felt that way. I had no friends. I ate my lunch in the bathroom. That sucks that she has no friends. I mean, honestly, I don't like that. She found solace among the misfits in George Lucas's space operas, discovering books like Timothy Zahn's Heir to the Empire and collecting action figures. When Lucas released the special editions movies, Headland lined up at her local theater on opening night. A few years ago, she had Ralph McQuarrie's concept art for Princess Leia tattooed on her right hand. A few years ago, so when she got the show in 2020. So again, some of this could all be very true, but I don't know, because you can say anything, right? And again, she got the tattoo a few years ago. A few years is 3 or 4 years. 2020, she got the Acolyte show, so let's not get too carried away. At the end of the day, we'll never know how big a fan she was, unless, of course, she puts out these stop-motion things she made. But I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. We'll see. Star Wars has been a part of my personality since I can remember, so working on this show has been a dream. I had to take my shot. She paused for a moment. If it doesn't succeed, it's because of me, she said. That's really scary to think about. Good! Take that responsibility. Don't blame the bigots and the this and that. Don't be the Kathleen Kennedy and say it's all... if anyone doesn't like the show, it's because they're bigots and misogynists. Take responsibility, Leslie. Like, there's certain times when she says stuff where I'm like, that's good, man. Like, she's actually like... I think she genuinely cares. No, I'm not going to go there, she said, climbing back on the razor's edge. Okay, so again, stuff like that, I really like that she says that. Unfortunately, she's under the umbrella of Kathy, who just gives her showrunners excuses for doing a crappy job, and blames fans when they don't like it, even though the writing sucks. So that's a huge one, guys. Let me know what you think in the comments section. This is, let's see what happens here. We've got a few days. I don't know. I'm not optimistic. I think it's going to be lore breaking, and I think there's going to be problems. And I think that the people making this stuff are very self-absorbed, and they make it all about themselves, and they're encouraged to do so by the head boss, Kathleen Kennedy, who tells them all to just make it about them. That's great. Thanks, Kathy. That's great. Who thinks she's Star Wars Jesus. Anyways, let me know in the comment section what you think, and if you like this content, please like, subscribe, always help the channel. Feel free to check out anything else on my channel, and have yourselves a really good day.